this is our official commitment video to UCLA.
Love it.
Go Bruins.
Bruins up.
I want to start why did you start with track and field in the first place? Like why track for you? Grade 11, you said, so.
Yeah, that's when I started training for it competitively, but I always kind of ran. So I actually started in cross country. Grade 3, I remember I did the cross country team, and I didn't really take it too seriously at practice. But the day of the meet, I just ran really hard, and then lo and behold, at the end, it was me and this one girl the whole race going first and second. At the end, I came out and I looked back, and everyone's like, "Sharelle, you never look back." Cause she passed me at the end. I ended up getting second. They're like, "You never look back." I was like, I didn't know. It was my first running experience, and so I did that, and I did cross country, grade 3 to grade 8. I stopped doing cross country because it got longer every year, and I was like, I'm not about that anymore. Why is the race getting longer? And then I did it for fun in grade 10 with this one girl, and I've always been kind of decent. I never wanted to train for it because it's a lot to train for distance in cross country. But on the meet day, I just show up and be like, let's go, let's run. But yeah, after grade 10, I was like, yeah, I'm actually not doing this anymore. And then I always did the fun one day school meets in elementary school, as you guys know. I just did the 400 and long jump. I just randomly started that, and then I'd always usually win my races. And then in high school, I went to Ashbury. So in high school, I just remember joining the team, same business, but we had practice, but it was still kind of for fun vibes. But I had ran 101 when I was in grade 8. In the 400, and then in grade 9, I didn't even know how to use blocks at this point. Went to OFSA, ran the OFSA finals. And I remember the little kids were like, "You don't know how to use blocks? Good luck."
So you were in OFSA and you didn't know how to use blocks at this point?
No, I was in the finals. Yeah,
street talent.
And then I go to my start, and I ended up getting third. That was the first time I broke a minute, so I ran 57:57 in the finals. And then after that, we were like, you need to actually start training for track because you have terrible form. My form was horrendous. I could send you guys videos. It was really bad. Terrible form, don't know how to use blocks, barely know what you're doing, but you still ran 57. So that summer I joined Ottawa Lions just for the summer and did a bunch of summer meets. And then after that, I took a break because it was a lot. I went to Ashbury and I lived in Barhaven. So I would mission to school and then go to practice. It was just too much for me, so I just stopped training, and I just continued doing the other sports at high school, volleyball, basketball, and then did the school team again. And then the next year in grade 11, I actually fully committed. I'm going to go to practice every day, at Ottawa Lions, or not every day, 3 times a week. But that's when I started taking it more seriously because one of my friends had made a world's team. I think it was World Youth in Colombia the year before, and we were like, "How did you do that?" And she was like, "Oh, you just run fast enough and you declare, they'll take you." So I was like, "Oh, bet." So that was my goal, grade 11 summer, and I ended up going to the Youth Commonwealth Games in the Bahamas for Canada. And so then basically grade 9, I ran 57:57 at OFSA. Grade 10, I ran 55:2 at OFSA. And then grade 11 was a really good year for me. I ran 53:75 at OFSA. That was every time I ran these times, the first time I went under a minute was at OFSA when I ran 57. First time I went under 56 was at OFSA when I ran 55 too. And the first time I went under 54 and 53 into 53 was at OFSA in grade 11. And then so I got to go to Bahamas with Team Canada. And then grade 12 was more serious. I started doing a bit of weight training because my coach is Glenn Gilbert. You guys don't know who he is. He's an Olympian for Canada. He was on the 96 4x1 relay team that won gold. That was before Andre and them just won 4x1 gold. That was the last time Canada had won. But he's also the head coach for Canada for track and field.
And he's from Ottawa?
Yeah, he's from Ottawa. He's still there. Okay. His daughter's in Ottawa too, everything. So he went to LSU for a bit and then came back to Canada. But yeah, still in Ottawa. And so that was my coach in grade 12. And then I went to World Juniors in Finland that summer before I started college.
That's crazy. You went to 2 international track meets or whatever, and before even going to university. That's actually insane. And you really started taking it serious, you said, after grade 10?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely grade 11, yeah.
Yeah, which is, I find that crazy. You started so late. I guess for some people, track people start way earlier, right? You started late and you weren't even really taking it seriously until someone was telling you, you should probably take this seriously, right? You weren't thinking of anything of it even when you were running this fast.
I was just like, oh, like it's for fun. Like I'm just trying to try and win. Basically, was my mindset. But I did competitive cheerleading grade 7, 8, and 9. So like that's probably why I didn't like start a little sooner. But I still feel like, I was just like, it was like a 1-day fun meet. So I would like show up, run the 1 day, leave. Like, yeah.
So what like who's like around you that like motivates you to do better and stuff, like your circle of people that you look to and you're like, I want to do what they're doing and I want to work with them and stuff like that. Who helps you out a lot?
So now or like back then?
All throughout your career.
Okay, so back then I didn't really have that. I was honestly just like literally on vibes. Like I was just like show up, run fast, try and win. Okay, whatever, move on.
Yeah.
Now definitely like my teammates. I think the biggest part about going away to school, especially when you're going away from home, is like building those bonds with people.
Yeah.
Your friends, your teammates, especially because we spend so much time together. Definitely those are the biggest motivational factors. Obviously, my family and friends back home are also very supportive of me, but just like having those immediate people who are also doing it with you, extremely beneficial, extremely motivational.
For sure, it definitely uplifts you. Like I relate to that. Like just being around like-minded athletes, and just you're literally in the same situation in life. Essentially, you're away. It's kind of just us here. It's a team sport and stuff. So like no one can relate to you. Like people literally doing what you're doing. But yeah, I was gonna say, what's it called? You guys, is there like a crazy rivalry with like UCLA and USC? Like, do you feel it, or is it just like kind of non-existent?
I would be lying if I said there wasn't. I personally just don't be getting involved in like drama like that. But actually, it's funny you guys say that. I'll also send you this footage and videos. But we had our dual meet, which is like every year UCLA and USC have a dual track meet, and it like flip-flops between the schools. This year was here. We had our dual meet, and like everyone was saying it wasn't that bad, but like everyone was like 2's down, 4's down, like going at each other. And it was because like, and like the meet wasn't even close. Like we knew who was gonna win and stuff, but it was just like it's like the energy that everyone comes with. And I was like, and I remember telling like all my other friends who were like not from LA or like not even from Canada or not even from the US, and they're like, oh, that's how LA really gets down. Because I like remember hearing, but I was like, whatever. But seeing it, I was like, whoa, like they take this seriously. Like basically in the 4x4. One of our guys like put his 2's down while he's running the 4x4.
Jeez.
And like in their faces like this to them, because all their people were like on the infield. He was like this to them while he's running past their other runner, and we were just like, there's no way he did that, because like we didn't have like our A team, so we knew like their team was probably gonna win.
Yeah,
so he did that, and then their other guys came back and passed our guys. So then they were like all up in our faces, and then it just broke out, and then the coaches were like holding back. It was so funny.
Mitch tried to be like
no, literally, like, and he ran really fast doing it too. I was like, oh, he was coming for blood. Like, yeah, he was working, insane. But I wouldn't say I had that whole let's go energy. I think I should be more aggressive though. Probably would help, but yeah.
So you're like you're a laid back. You think you're a laid back individual, but like when it's time to run, like is that competitiveness? Like I can see it's in you, because you said when you would do OFSA and stuff, your times kept getting better. So it's like when the lights kept getting brighter, you just kept performing, right?
Yeah, and I think, though, I will say, like, the transition from, like, high school to college, sport is very, very different. One, just because the training schedule, the school schedule, the life schedule, like, being out there alone by yourself is a big adjustment. So I feel like when people, like, might not necessarily do as well, that is because, like, everything's changing so fast. But I also feel like in terms of competition, there's a lot more competition, especially with me going to the US for school, specifically in track and field. A lot more competition. I will say I would try and still be competitive, but I don't think I am as aggressive as I should be. Me personally, like thinking on it, and from like what my coaches have told me, like they're like, you definitely should be more aggressive. So that's definitely like, yeah, when I think about my mindset then versus now, then I was just like, really laid back, like just like I'm gonna try and win. Versus now I'm like, okay, like there's these other factors. I know I'm not the fastest going in. Like let's be realistic. I'm a bit of an overthinker though, which is also not helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What's it called? You spoke how you came to the States for school. Like first of all, so how was it going to Harvard, and like so how different is it being at Harvard and then being out here at UCLA?
Yeah, very, very different. I think just in general, East Coast to West Coast, first off. Yeah. West Coast is definitely a lot more laid back, chill. Everyone takes their time. They're just like, oh, we got so much time. Like, we don't have to answer you right now. Or, like, they pass you along. Versus, I think East Coast is more, like, on, like, you guys seem like the New York mindset. Like, always has something, always going. I think that's for starters. And then Harvard, because it is an Ivy League, not as focused on sports, not as much like support for sports. Obviously, like there's like Harvard has like the number one or the most amount of NCAA sports within the whole NCAA.
They do.
Yeah, they have the most teams out of all the other schools because like I don't know why, but they just do. Other schools kind of like they focus on specific sports. But yeah, so like we have the most sports, but like to spread out like the support and stuff, it's not as much obviously because there's so many teams, and then it's like a lot of like donations outside of with what athletics in the school can give us. It's like a lot of specific like team donations from alumni that help fund other sports. So like if you see like different support levels for like different sports, it's because maybe that team has more donors than other sports teams.
Okay.
Outside of like sports specifically, school-wise, I think the campus, I really like UCLA's campus, but it is very, very hilly. And it is a lot of walking. I remember we used to complain at Harvard, like we live in dorms, like 96 or something % of students live on campus all 4 years. And they do it to make it like very equitable. So like Harvard's very big on like equity, and they're like, no matter where you come from, no matter your background, like we want to give everyone a fair and equal opportunity to like just like access everything basically. And so what they do is like they like randomly assign you the houses like Harry Potter kind of thing, and like even like the rooms that you get put in random. So you can have billionaires living in like worse housing than somebody who's like really poor. Like they're very big on equity and like just like diversity and like having everyone equal opportunities for everything. And so most people live on campus all 4 years versus here like people like move off campus after freshman year. So there's that aspect.
My bad. Sorry to cut you off. But you're not allowed to pick where you go. Like they just. It's funny how you said like Harry Potter. That's literally crazy.
Yeah, we get sorted into houses.
Wow.
So like you form like a blocking group your freshman year in like February or something, and then March you like submit it. And so like your blocking group is like a group of people that you're going to be in a house with.
Okay.
Not necessarily like within the same bedroom or like living suite with, but like same house. Because when we graduate, we walk with the people in our house. But for the college people.
Wow. Okay.
And then each blocking group can link to another blocking group. So there's like another group of people who are like going to be in the same neighborhood. Honestly, there's like 3 neighborhoods. There's like River West, River Central, River East, and then the Quad. If you're in the river, like they're all pretty close. The Quad's a bit further away, but in my experience coming to school here, it's not as far of a walk as it is walking here to houses here. So like the Quad's like 15 minutes from like on campus versus the River House is probably like 5 minutes, and everyone's like, you don't want to be in the Quad because it's far.
Yeah.
But like in comparison to other schools, it's not far at all.
Yeah, like is everything like within like could you get everywhere like within 20 minutes like walking, or is it
at Harvard or here?
Or both?
At Harvard for sure.
Yeah.
Here depends. A lot of people have scooters, bikes. A lot of people drive because it is a very large campus. I think also the largest difference like public school to private school. The transition from that, obviously there are way more students here. Like there's so many people that you'll see and like probably never see again versus like at Harvard, like you start to see people like people know people, people know your business because the school's so small, our class sizes are small, all that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the class size. So how many people would be in like an average class at Harvard?
If you're taking like a major, if you're studying like more like core classes, you might have like a big lecture hall, but then all those classes will have like sections that also meet again during the week. And like your section size is probably like no more than like 20 people, but like within the lecture, obviously a lot, like hundreds of students. And then depending on like other smaller classes you can take, it varies. Like there could be like seminar style classes that would be like a bit larger, but whenever they're larger, you have a section as well.
Okay. And yeah, what did you take at Harvard?
I studied economics and I did a minor in psychology.
Okay, that's what's up. It's honestly crazy to me that you said Harvard has the most like sports and NCAA.
No, I know.
You think it's such an academic school but they have every sports team. That's kind of that's pretty shocking. Anyway.
So I want to like ask, like, why did you choose Harvard? Like, did you have other offers from other schools? So why was it Harvard that you wanted to go to? Yeah.
So actually, I reached out to the Harvard coach. So I had a couple of offers from like non-Ivies. I think the only Ivy that 2 Ivies offered me. So Cornell was on it early, and UPenn offered me, and like I did like the whole visit to UPenn and like the home visit as well. And so like Ivy Leagues were not even on my radar at this point. This is like me in grade 12 in the fall, like don't know what I'm doing, whatever. But like just like exploring. So I did have a lot of like Texas schools and like also like what do they call it, Midwest schools as well in the U.S. But so after my Penn visit, I realized I didn't really know about the Ivy Leagues, but I also didn't think like they were that competitive. I didn't know they were a D1. I didn't know any of that. But once I learned that, I was like, oh, they're D1. It's just sometimes it's a bit harder because it depends on where they go to compete to get that competition to make it all the way, right? And so once I learned a little bit more about that, there were some other people at my school, 2 of them the year before me, who were already going to Harvard. And then once I learned basically that Ivy League could also be competitive, I was like, let me try other Ivies too. So I did reach out to other Ivy League schools. But it was also like my biggest thing was like I wanted to go somewhere that's fit for me academically and athletically. Has like tracks an individual sport. Like it's not really based on like the team so much. Like it's pretty individual. So like, if you have a good coach, you can really go anywhere. I also want warm weather. So obviously did not get that at Harvard. I was like, ideally I could go to Stanford, but they were like, we have too many Canadians, blah, blah, blah. Like,
wait, what does that mean?
They're like the Stanford process, they were saying is like it's a bit different than other schools in terms of like admittance and everything. And but then I did my visit to Harvard. My mother came on that one, and after like the whole process and like everything, she's like, if you get in, you're going there. So I was like, okay. Like, I mean, like you can't really argue with that, right? Yeah. So, and I don't even regret it at all. Like my Harvard experience was like amazing. Like even like having some teammates from here who are also some are graduates or some who've just been here. I'm like, yeah, like I loved my Harvard experience so much. Like great socially. Like I know it really surprises people, but it was a really good experience. We are a bit in a bubble when we're there, which obviously you realize when you're out of it, but it was a really good experience, and so I definitely don't regret that at all.
So what was the perception like? What do you think like a wrong perception people have of Harvard students?
I guess I would say that Harvard students are really just like in their books 24/7.
That's not the case.
Yeah, no. I do remember when we first went though, like within like the first 2 weeks, everyone's like using like special language, like the vernacular, and I'm just like, oh, we're just gonna be talking like this all the time. Like that's kind of crazy. And I think everyone has imposter syndrome going in, thinking like, I don't belong here, like I'm not good enough to be here. But after the first 2 weeks, it just like stopped, and everyone like spoke normally, like had slang, like you know what I mean. Like people come from all over, and so I think that was the biggest like, oh, we can do this. I think pushing through that. Harvard people are very work hard, play hard people, I would say too. So obviously during like exam period and everything, like they're gonna like hit the butts and study and grind, but they're also gonna go out and have fun. Like they're not just gonna stay in their rooms. And for some people, while they were in high school, they were strictly just like in the books 24/7, never went out, never did anything. So when they get to college, they kind of like go crazy a little bit. That some people don't, some people like know how to maintain it, but they are very work hard, play hard. I would say that. And I think that's really shocking for people. Like when I came here, I was like noticing like people don't really go out here, and I was like, this is so weird for me. Like I'm not used to that. Like I'm used to seeing people like going out. But I also think within LA, people are inside earlier as well. Versus at Harvard, people would be outside at night, like 2 a.m. outside, studying outside or doing whatever outside. Versus here, I feel like people are at home more.
So people actually like, you feel like, so the night people don't be out late? Like, is it just you're talking about like UCLA or like LA in general?
I think it's LA in general. But yeah, I think it's more LA in general, I would say, versus like Boston. I don't know what it is, but that was really surprising for me when I saw that difference.
I'm actually kind of shocked though, like honestly, like hearing from both sides when you're saying like the Harvard, how they are at Harvard, I didn't think that at all. Like from what I see, I was just thinking like, okay, yeah, they're just here for their education. I didn't even know, and even when you're saying like billionaires and stuff like that could be in your dorm, you don't get to choose. Like
the Harry Potter thing is crazy. Like it's honestly insane to me because like, the fact that they just throw you in, but it's low key good, like in ways that you don't see, because it forces you to create the connections and network and everything, things like that.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from Harvard. Everyone's always like, oh, I know it's cliche, but like the people, and I think it's very true because you meet such a diverse group of people, but also Harvard kind of forces you to like socialize. Like people come from different backgrounds, have different like perceptions and ideas already, but when we all come to Harvard, like we learn to like listen to other people who might not necessarily have the same perceptions as us or the same like way of thinking, like without arguing, like listening to them, being like, I literally don't agree with you, but I'm gonna hear you, I'm gonna hear you out, I'm gonna hear your thought process, and learning how to deal with that, because like in the real world, you can't really choose who you're around all the time, right?
For sure.
And so I think that's the biggest thing, that and like people just learn how to like speak up for themselves and really voice themselves. Obviously there are people who are like strictly in the books, but I'm telling you, like, it was surprising.
Mm-hmm. Now I remember what I wanted to ask. So you know how you go on track meets and stuff? Like, how does that work? I always wondered how the competition works, like throughout, whether it's the season or like with your club, or how does that work?
Yeah. So sports teams, it varies. Obviously, if you're like on like a more like less individualized sport, like track and field, so like let's see, like basketball, football, for example, like they have their set schedule. And I think this also goes from small school, big school, or Ivy League to like bigger conference schools. Ivy League, we don't have like any academic tutors or anything who will like travel with us when we go to meet. So specifically track wise, we do get the schedule and everything. We know when our meets are, and it's like our job to like plan, like tell you if you're gonna miss a test, let your professor know, like be responsible in that sense. Like, I'm gonna miss this, can I make it up? They say no, and tell your coach, like work it out that way. If you're on a team, same thing in the Ivy League, like it's kind of your responsibility. Versus like bigger schools, I would say teams, even like within the track team, like they like gave us like this template letter that we just sent to our teachers with like all our dates that we're gonna be missing, so that they know. Within undergrad, they have academic tutors and everything. So while they didn't specifically travel with us in the track team, I don't know if they do it with other teams here, but I know at other schools they do have people who will travel with them for academic support. But also here, they have academic tutors. All the undergrads have to meet with them like once or twice a week or something like that. I don't know until like what year, but they all have to meet with them. Versus like Ivy League, like you don't have that. Like if you want to meet with someone, you're doing it yourself. It's very solo planning, because again, like you came to an Ivy League, are you really here for your sport? You here for school?
Yeah, they expect you to be concerned about it yourself.
Exactly.
You have to maintain a certain average to be eligible to play.
Yeah. When I was at Harvard, it was 2.3 or take a knee.
Well, take a knee is crazy.
You have to have a 2.3 GPA.
Take a knee.
It's a little different because I know the Canada, like if I broke it down specifically, I know an 80 is an A minus in Canada, right?
Is it?
Yeah, low key.
Yeah, an 80 in the US is not an A minus.
Yeah, it's like a B, right?
Yeah, it's like a B minus.
So it's not that good.
Yeah, no. But like the grading system and like the scale is different. Like I always tell people that, because they're like an 80 is an A minus in Canada, like y'all are dumb. I'm like, no, like we just use different measures, obviously. But so like that's how they break it down. But like if you don't have a 2.3, you're not technically eligible to play. Here, when I came here, I remember like the first like athlete barbecue, they were like, yeah, like it's like a 2.0. I was like, a 2.0? Like, yeah, so I think, if I remember correctly, I think it's 2.0 across the board for all of them, but the Ivy League sets a higher standard.
How many times do you guys compete a year? Like 4 times, or it's like, yeah, how many events do you guys have per year?
So away meets, obviously like track, you have to go to like different track meets. At Harvard, we actually just traveled a lot, indoors and outdoors, obviously because it's cold.
Cold.
Yeah.
Cold
out. Sorry. Not as cold, but still cold. Okay. There's still snow.
Like degrees wise, before you continue, degrees wise, what's cold here?
Okay. Well, to be fair, we did have a snowstorm last year. I will tell you, it looked like an Ottawa winter. I will tell you that. Not here, in Boston, because of global warming and everything. But usually, like, it will snow, and then the snow kind of melts, but it's still cold. But I want to say like minus 20, like nothing crazy.
Minus 20 in Boston, right?
Celsius, yeah.
And then here, cold.
Like
what's
cool.
Cold here?
Cool. I mean, it was cooler this year, so I can't even really speak on California weather because everyone's like, this is abnormal. Like, it's not normally like this, but like the cold is probably like minus 2 or something like that. Like, nothing crazy.
For that to be the coldest is insane.
And like, this is a cold year. Like, it's not normally that cold.
Like, it's freezing to these folks. That's insane.
I saw someone with a jacket yesterday and it was hot to us.
Yeah.
You had a puffer jacket on.
Sometimes it's just for the fashion, though.
It's a statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like the people out here, they actually have their own, like, swag. Do you notice that? From, like, how would you describe it? Like,
I think it honestly varies. Like, people really do. Because, like, I feel like the whole thing of LA is, like, trying to stand out. Like, something, you know what I mean? Like, I'm on that social media grind, or I'm going to be a celebrity. Like, people are somewhat stuck in their own ways and stuck in their own heads out here a little bit more, I would say, especially with it being LA. Not specifically, like, on campus. It's just what I've noticed going around LA.
Would you say, do you think you could live here?
I think I could be here for a bit. I don't know if I want to like full on move out here, but like from other people who've grown up in LA, they say like it grows on people, which it has grown on me. When I was first here in the fall, I was like, bro, like I can't do this. But then I started like exploring more and doing more things because it's so accessible, even though just like you have to drive everywhere. And so it has grown on me if you explore things, but yeah, it grows on you. It's not a place that you're like, if you're not from here, you don't immediately like, yes, I love it.
Yes, like in March, are you in season at that time, or
Yes, okay. So track and field has indoor and outdoor seasons, but the track and field indoor championships are like mid-March. So basically, when Harvard kicks off campus, the people who made it to indoor nationals for track, from our school specifically, like they were packing their rooms quick because they were going to travel. But the day they were supposed to leave, Harvard was like, no, we're not letting you travel. But other schools already started traveling to the championships. So they're already there. I think it was in, I can't remember, Alabama at the time. So other schools already traveled there, but once they got there, the NCAA shut down. They're like, we're not doing it anymore. So they all went back to their schools, packed up their stuff, and then they went home. So basically, Harvard was always on it first. And one thing I will say about Harvard students, we love to complain because it works. Like we complain, we get what we want. And I think it's because the Harvard name. Harvard's like, I don't want my name in this. You know what I mean? Like,
okay, yeah.
Right? So Harvard students were complaining like, they sent us home, da 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 da. And then weeks later, everyone's getting sent home. The Harvard NCAA people were like, they're not letting us go, like blah, blah, blah. And then boom, like NCAA shut down. Like, you know what I mean? So Harvard does know what it's doing. And I think one of the reasons why I was the first school to do it is like to set a precedent for other schools across the world, basically, to like do it as well.
Yeah, but you guys were able to compete the next year, or was that season canceled as well?
So the Ivy League didn't compete in the fall of 2020 at all, and that was because not all the Ivy League schools brought everyone back. So like Harvard was very specific. They said freshmen only. Some of the Ivy Leagues had other things going on. But because we couldn't all and they couldn't just be like athletes only on campus. Like they were not going to do that. So that's why the Ivy League didn't compete. And that's why if you see across the board, people in all of the conferences all got a year back because the Ivy League didn't compete in the NCAA that year. Okay. So if you saw like the basketball players who like, for instance, like they technically were done, but they had another season, it's because the Ivy League was not competing that year. Track and field wise, that meant we got our outdoor 2020 season fully back because nobody competed because of COVID. We got our indoor 2020 season back because of the whole Ivy League thing. Some schools in the Ivy League did compete outdoors in spring 2021. So it varies on what the athletes. Some people have 2 outdoor seasons and 1 indoor, versus some other Ivy League athletes only have 1 indoor, 1 outdoor. Yeah. It depends. But that's basically what happened. Because people did have the option to go back in the spring of 2021, then they didn't just like cancel that for everyone again.
Okay.
But in the fall, they canceled it for everyone. So, yeah.
What's your favorite spot to eat out here?
I'm terrible with this.
I don't know.
I don't have like a favorite like go-to. Have you guys been to In-N-Out? Oh, you guys should
it's
try
not
it.
In-N-Out?
Oh!
Wendy's over In-N-Out.
Wendy's over In-N-Out?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
I'll get a double stack at Wendy's before I go to get a double cheeseburger.
How do you guys feel about Dunkin'?
Donuts?
I don't like
Timmy's
donuts.
over Dunkin'. Do you be eating on campus?
Sometimes. Like I've eaten in like the campus like dining halls. They say UCLA has the best on-campus food in the country. It's pretty good.
That's
UCLA does?
Yeah.
So where on campus should we get food if we were to get food?
On campus?
Or is it like a buffet and they just like, you know how it is at
there's
a rest thing
servers.
like
I
that?
saw.
There's
I think
servers
people
like
were doing
that.
Okay.
But there's also like in Ackerman where you guys were at Kirkhoff, there's like a bunch of dining places up there. Best on campus food. It's probably in one of the dining halls that I can even get you guys into. So, but Epicuria within Ackerman. What time is it? Yeah, it's close right now. But within there, their food's also good. But I don't know. I don't really have like favorite. Like I don't like specifically go to one place. So.
Okay, so for Ottawa, like I want to like, where's your favorite place to go in Ottawa when you're back? Because when you come back, right, you're for sure thinking of like, I need to have this at least once before I go back.
When I go back, gotta get a poutine. Obviously,
from where?
Where did I go last time? I'm not picky. Okay, so I think last time I went to Smoked.
Okay.
Yeah. I always make sure when I come back, whenever I leave Canada, I'm bringing back ketchup chips. I'm bringing back all dressed chips. I'm bringing back those Silly Brasino chocolate cookies. My friends love them.
Wait, they don't have ketchup chips here, or are you saying
No.
from?
They don't.
They
Ketchup chips and all dressed chips are Canadian. I think my friends from Georgia said that they've seen ketchup chips in Georgia, but they've never touched them.
Yeah, no one reads it.
But yeah, ketchup chips is hit or miss with people. All dressed, everyone loves them. They're always like, make sure you bring back all dressed chips.
All dressed for sure.
I did see like another like Ruffles American version of the all dressed when I was in Boston pre-COVID. It tasted almost the same, but not as good, obviously. But after COVID, I did not see them again. So, but yeah, those are like the things like I always bring back. Obviously, I think our chocolate tastes better in Canada. Like I don't really eat chocolate out here anymore because once you like eat it enough, you'll be like, It's like also like the European chocolate's obviously like the best chocolate to eat.
Okay, and one other food place in Ottawa. Are you a fan of shawarma or? Yeah, like okay. So where do you go to get shawarma in Ottawa?
I don't have a specific.
You don't?
You need to go to Shawarma Palace.
I've been to Shawarma Palace.
Okay.
Which one? The one in Barrie?
No.
Okay, I like how she said that. She's
downtown, please.
Oh, but downtown.
No.
Downtown.
Don't go to downtown. Don't listen to her. Make sure you go to the one in the south. For the people watching in Ottawa, go to the one in the south. That is the best place.
Location.
Yeah, that's the best shawarma in the world. Like it's ranked actually. It's actually
probably
ranked,
in the whole Western Hemisphere.
I'm gonna need you to send it to me.
I'll show you.
I'll go when I go home.
I think it's top 30 in the world. Don't quote me on that, but it's up there for sure.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like what's it called? Well, you seem like you don't actually like. I don't want to say this on camera, but like you don't care to like go home like that. But do you ever feel like homesick or like adjusting to like coming out here? Now you're by yourself. You go back home. Is that like different?
Yeah, it's funny you said that because it's kind of true about me. Like I'm not a very like, like I need to be home. Like I feel like I've always been like, like I'm ready to like venture off into the world kind of person.
Yeah.
I think even like going into college, like I wasn't super like, oh my gosh, like, what's gonna happen? Like I was super excited. And I think it's also because the people that I've met when I'm there, like obviously if I was having a terrible time, I'd be like, get me out of here right now. But yeah, mainly going home for the family and friends at home. A lot of my closest friends though aren't even home like that. So, but yeah, definitely to see family and to connect. But like you guys were saying, like Ottawa, I always tell everyone like Ottawa's like the capital city. It's kind of boring. It's a government town. Mostly things are going on in the summer, but even then, like I was saying, like my closest friends aren't even home. So when I'm in different cities that have a lot more going on, I like to be there instead.
Okay.
But
yeah. But I get it though. Like especially when you leave, you see other things. Like you're in LA. Like I can see why you're not really rushing to go to Ottawa anytime soon. Because there's not much literally besides your family. So I can see why you're just like, let me go to other states. So how do you like hang out with your friends in the other, like who also do track as well, right?
Yeah.
You guys like, where do you meet basically? Because you're not gonna see them in Ottawa. So how do you stay in contact with them like as much as possible?
Yeah. So even going back to like going home a lot, I realized I obviously can't go home a lot because track is like all year. So like we're literally training for like when we start school in the fall, and then if you're like making it all the way, like outdoor nationals is in June. If you're staying for that long, and if you're trying to do summer track too, you got to train in the summer. So like that's another reason why I wasn't home a lot. Like other sports, they have off season, they have more flexibility. Like that's not really existent in track. In terms of seeing my other friends, obviously like when we're at school, a lot of people will do summer stuff where they're like specifically in one area, or they'll go home too. So during those summer months when I was at Harvard, either like they're just home for the summer, like whatever, like everyone's doing their own thing, FaceTime, calling on the phone. But for friends, now I would say, now that I'm like not in college anymore, it's a bit harder, obviously. You have to put more of an effort. We have done like trips here and there.
Okay.
I'll go see them, they'll come see me, or like we'll meet up somewhere else and do something together kind of thing. I think that's just like, if you're willing to put in the time and the effort, it's going to work. But obviously I also have friends who I'm really close to that I don't speak to that often. Like I have like a core group of friends that like constantly, like every other day or like every week we're on the phone. And then I have other friends that I'm really close to too that like we just don't have the time for each other. But I think in terms of like life and like growing up and moving forward, I think if you're all understanding that like, hey, I'm not always available, I'm gonna be busy too. Like we all have things going on. It's just about like the value and the time and the effort that you're putting in towards that person is what's going to like maintain the relationship, maintain the friendship. And then obviously, yeah, it's great like when we go on trips and like we can see each other on like vacation and stuff. Yeah.
So what would your normal like your average day be like in season? And even how you're mentioning that like your nationals or whatever's in June, that's insane. So like I'm not even doing school potentially, and I'm still here like year round, and then it's like I have no time off. Like it'd be hard to even go on a vacay or something. Like you're always locked in practicing and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's actually crazy. Year round? No.
Yeah, track is a year-round sport because we got indoor and outdoor season. So in Canada, I know it's just indoor and it ends in like April, which is also like when classes end. It's a bit shorter, but then people who take it more seriously will train throughout and do summer season. But yeah.
So yeah, the day like what is your day like start to finish? I
can do both. So with undergraduate classes in the morning, obviously, lunch and everything. Then I have practice probably like early afternoon. After practice weights probably right after that. And then if you're in like any clubs or organizations, you might have meetings for that, or you might have to go to section, you might have to go to office hours for help on those like homework problems and stuff like that as well. But I think I'm a very big person on like being around people and like being social. So I also like did a lot of things with friends. Like if I didn't have too much work, making sure to go visit my friends. We're on campus, so it's not too hard to do, obviously. Or just like connecting with others, like taking time to like call my other friends who are not like literally on campus with me as well. And then here, my schedule is a bit different. So like I had practice mid/early afternoon to like early evening, and then I had classes at night. So it's a bit different here. Night classes really took it out of you. But
yeah, man. So after a practice, you do not want to go 7 to 10 after a practice.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
trying to go home
straight
and
by
sleep.
the class.
But yeah, night classes, and then I feel like my schedule was a lot more laid back here. Also, just because I just came in and it was like very new. Versus Harvard, I had time to like accumulate things. Like I was like doing different organizations, I was leading them as like the co-president and stuff like that. And so I was definitely a lot busier at Harvard. Yeah. With it also being undergraduate, I had like more work, more like like those like introductory classes. You have like a lot of busy work in. I had a lot more of that, but I think honestly like the people who keep you going within that. And then in terms of like competing and stuff, it's the same thing like I was saying earlier. You kind of have an idea of when you're going to travel, so it's about being able to manage your time, manage your tasks well, and like making sure you're doing all that properly to make sure that you're not falling behind. And then if you are falling behind, being proactive and be like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this. Can I get an extension?
Sorry. Shout out Road Games Podcast.
Forza, right?
Shout out HBK Money. Make sure y'all check him out on YouTube and everything. But were you saying something? Yeah.
Before that, we got really interrupted.
By the lights, not you.
I was talking about the lights.
I was like, please, I can't even see him.
Yeah. So for the track athletes who are younger than you, and I feel like, do people in the city like ask you advice and stuff? Like because you're a D1 athlete, like do other track athletes like just message you and try to get a hold of you? Does that happen or no?
Not too much. I mean, I remember when I was at Harvard, I had someone reach out to me. She was being referred to Harvard. She was from Toronto. But she was like reaching out to like every school that she's kind of interested in. I think that was really smart. I wish I did that. Like just going on social media, being like, who are the Canadians in that school? I'm gonna reach out to them, connect with them. Like I don't really get that too much, and honestly, I don't really mind it too much. But I had the basketball players from my high school did like a California tour, and so they're out here. And so like I met up with them or whatever, and I was like, if you guys have any questions, it's like a couple of them did reach out to me, but not too much because I feel like when I go home to Ottawa, I don't really know anyone, honestly. Because like I was saying, like my closest friends aren't really there like that anyways. And so when I go home, it's literally just like family time basically. And so I literally will like walk around Ottawa and just be like, I don't know anyone. And I'm quite literally like, I'm serious because I've been away for so long. Trust. And like the people who've like come to school in Ottawa, like I don't know any of them because I was never there. So yeah, I don't know too many people. Obviously, if I go back to my track club, like they remember me, they know me and stuff like that. But people don't really ask much. I feel like it is also partially because they're like, oh, like Harvard, like I don't know how to like do that. A lot of people do stay in Canada, but the ones who want to go, away to school in the U.S. Like I definitely heard it, but yeah, I don't get it a lot, but
So what
yeah.
advice would you give like the younger age group who are also doing track, like coming up? What would you say to them? Like you know,
In terms of like going to school and doing the sport, or going to the U.S. and doing their sport.
I would say yes in terms of like trying to take track seriously. Like at one point that switch flipped for you, right? And you started taking it seriously. So what advice would you give for them like now, like what age, like should you really start trying to take it seriously and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I feel like obviously people are just going through the motions and then maybe eventually they'll get serious with it. But if you were to give advice on that.
I'm actually laughing because I personally don't even think that I even took it that seriously when I was in high school still.
She's a diva.
I'm sorry.
Allen Iverson vibes. She said, I just showed up in a little dynamic warm-up and I'm gone.
Like when I think back to the stuff I did in high school, even though like I did have more serious training in grade 11, 12, I still don't think I was taking it as seriously as I should have been. I remember like my closest track friend, she was like, I don't even know how you're going to the U.S. for track because she's like, you have practice like 3 times a day. You be missing it sometimes. She's like, I'm here every day. Like she was saying, like, and it was a big adjustment for me. Like, don't get me wrong. I was really like, wow, like, woo. But yeah, I don't think I even took it that seriously in comparison to my other friends. But like, I would say if you know you want to do it, you want to do it. You'll be ready to lock in. I also want to say, make sure you're still having fun with it because I know a lot of people do get burnt out in their sports, especially as they get older. Depending on like when you join it, if you started very young, make sure you're still enjoying yourself because that will keep the motivation going. That will allow you to want to do more, and like the people that you're going to meet is definitely going to want to help push you as well, I think. And then I'll say, yeah, I think those are the biggest factors for me in terms of motivation is like making sure that you still enjoy doing it because if you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to want to do it. You're going to feel a little decommitted to it. You're not going to want to put time and energy into it if it's something that's draining you. You don't want it to feel like it's draining you. You want to make sure you're still enjoying yourself. But don't put too much pressure on yourself, like, I need to be perfect, I need to do this, because that's not going to make it fun either. Like, and if you're doing a sport specifically for yourself versus if like your parents are pushing you, make sure it's something that you also want to do. And like, I think taking the time to sit down and look at that is a very big and major factor that a lot of people don't think about. And I think that's kind of where the burnout comes in. Like, but yeah, just even like when you get to college, a lot of people are like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. But like the people in the environment kind of help you push you through it. But before that, I would say, yeah, make sure it's something you definitely want to do. Like tap in, like sit down with yourself and really think about it and think about if that's something you want to keep pursuing.
And I wanted to ask you, so you know how you said you started taking it serious at grade 10, 11 and on? So what did that switch look like? So what did you do differently once you started taking it serious?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference that I always explain to my American friends is like in the U.S., when you're doing high school track, like your high school track team is very serious. The way it's run is like a track club. So when I was in Ottawa, like our high school track team is like more like a co-curricular, which is like most high school track teams in Canada. So when I say I took it serious, I mean like I joined the track club. I joined Ottawa Lions. Like I joined Ottawa Lions. I told you in summer grade 9, and then I actually like went to practice consistently and like did a few indoor meets with them, grade 11 and 12. So like that's what I mean when I say take it serious, like actually getting coaching. Not just like the high school coaching. Because some high school coaches are very good, but I would say in comparison, like high school teams in Canada versus the U.S., the same level of intensity is not there.
Nowhere near. Like that's bro. Like even if you look at a high school facility in the States,
you're
not even gonna find like one that looks that good in the whole city of Ottawa.
You're not gonna find that. So that's what I mean. I think it's obviously very different for other sports. Like if you're like doing more team sports, you've been doing that since you're young. You need to develop those skills and everything. I do also think track is a sport too, though. That sometimes people are just like, like I don't even know if I could ever be good at this because it is talent. Which, while I do believe like that is partially true, I think there are ways that you can improve yourself still, by like practicing and like maintaining those skills. And like I think it really depends on like the coaching and the people around you that you have.
And wait, you said you run 400, right?
400 and 400 hurdles, yes.
And the hurdles, 400.
I know them hurdles is hard as shit. Just to begin over like at that speed is kind of insane.
So not sprint hurdles. You're talking like it's like a lap. They're like 30 meters apart. They're
okay.
But I thought it was like you were really like doing the all around 400. I was
no. There's only 10. There's 10 in the straight one. There's 10 around hurdles.
Okay, so were you scared when you first did
Oh
hurdles?
yeah, definitely. I only did it because I always did the 400 long jump, and then in Canada they let you do 400 hurdles in grade 11 and 12, but before that you do 300 hurdles. In the U.S. you do 300 hurdles like all 4 years, depending on what state you're in. But I only did the 300 hurdles, I think, in grade 10 because they were basically like, you're fast at the 400, you should just try the 300 hurdles. Like, I was like, okay. Like, 300 hurdles is fun. Like, it's like, do. Like, it's not quite a 400. Yeah, so I did that. And then I remember, like, I did an offset and I actually disqualified myself. It was so funny. Not funny at the time, but, like, we had, like, prelims in the morning and finals later, and my coach was like, you should probably start a little faster. You probably, like, get the record. And I was like, oh, okay, let's try it. But when I tell you I could not hurdle, I still could barely hurdle properly. So I got to the hurdle with, like, my other leg, and I, like, brain farted and just, like, ran around it. And then, like, I, like, stopped for a second, and then one of my close friends was, like, jumping, and she's, like, on the back strip, so she's, like, kind of near me. She's like, go, Sharelle. So I started running again. Mm-hmm. And I, like, hurdle form was horrendous, just, like, flailing. Mm-hmm. And then I finished the race, I won, but then they were like, what happened? Yeah. So I got disqualified, and I was like, this is too much. But then I still did it in grade 11 and 12 because, like, it changes. There's a big change from, like, 300 hurdles to 400 hurdles, that extra 100. It really gets you. It really does get you. I did that, and I was still kind of just, like, decent. But I think when I went to Youth Commonwealth Games, I only went for the 400. And they were like, you know what, we only have one 400 hurdler. You did it at nationals. Like, would you do it here? I was like, because I was like, I'm putting the 400 hurdles. Like, this is too much. And so then I did it there, but I ran, like, pretty decently there. And so after that, I was like, oh, like, maybe if I get my skill and, like, form together, like, I can actually be good at this. Because I think because it is more of, like, a mind game, it is more technical and everything. Not too many people are in it. Specifically, I would say in Canada, it's not as competitive as the 400 is because of all those other aspects to it. So it's like if I really train it well and get it together, then maybe I could be good at the 400 hurdles, which is why, yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing too. I want because like you see how you're saying your form's bad and like you can show us. Honestly, we're not locked in enough. Like we probably couldn't even tell, yo, that's bad running form. Like because we don't even take in how much of a difference. Like I don't know what makes a difference, but like a slight change could like improve your whole running stride and everything.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for joining us in this episode. Yeah, see you later.
Like, comment, and subscribe.